Well, it's 6 o'clock, so let me call this meeting of the Harmony Community Development District to order. We'll start with roll call. Dan?
Here.
Lucas?
Here.
Carol?
Present.
And I'm Mark, the manager. Is Joe joining us by? No. I think she has some medical issue. We'll start with the audience comments. There is a 3-minute time limit. As a reminder, it's not a question and answer session. If you have questions for the board or any board members, we're always happy to answer your emails, and I get plenty of them. Any comments?
Thanks.
Thanks. Joe Janizek, 7159 Oak Glen Trail, here in Harmony, obviously. First question is, I noticed on your resolution that you're going to look at today, 2024-07, there's 2 names on there I don't recognize, Howard Neal, Steve Bloom. I was wondering if somebody could sometime, maybe when we're doing that, could say who they are, because I never heard of them before. Never seen them before till tonight, I guess. Okay, that's one. The assessment methodology is going to be covered. That's on page 45 of your package. I think there's another that should be considered, is taking the actual Osceola County home assessments that they produce each year, and through basically a simple spreadsheet using Excel, you could make that spread out evenly. So if it's a big price house, they pay more. If it's a low price house, they pay less. Same thing with the apartments. If they're being assessed at an apartment rate, they pay their fair share. So I think that should also be looked at, just pulling that information off, or they could probably just provide it to you actually from the county. The alleyways, I have a couple of comments, maybe I don't even know the comments or suggestions. Blazing Trail, I look at some information that was talked about last meeting here. I don't know if it's just a turning radius that is being improved, or if it's the whole alleyway that's going to be stripped and repaved. I looked at the 2 bid amounts. I think the one bidder didn't pay any attention to what he was really bidding on. I think he figured he's going to make a fortune. The other bidder, I think, is high personally. And like I said, at the previous meetings, I've done this type of work before. So I just think that I know it's hard to get bids for these. This is a small job probably for them, but I think maybe it's something that you should really look hard at and maybe see if there's other alternatives. And I think there are, and maybe putting it off maybe 6 months or a year. The only other thing, I did sit in on your budget meeting, and I don't know if I can make comments to that right now, but I just want to make a couple of quick things. Over the last 2 years, our assessments have raised roughly 43%. I'd like to see them stay around the inflation rate of 3 to 4%. Remember, last year's assessment, the majority of that was somewhere between $350,000 and $400,000 for the new building that was not built. And that money is not being taken out of the budget, I don't think. So you get another $350,000 to $400,000 this year. And that could go through that other project that you discussed on there about possibly purchasing a building that's already existing. That's really my comments. So hope I could leave this with you, which is the first part. So the budget is on there because I don't know what I was going to say on that until I sat in the meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, Joe texted me that she's planning on joining Zoom.
Oh, okay. Any other audience comments? Nope. There anybody on Zoom? Nope. Very good. We will deviate slightly from the published agenda, and we'll move up the discussion of assessment methodology so that Leah can explain to us what our options are. So
Absolutely.
there we go.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for giving the opportunity to go through the reevaluation of your assessment model, your existing methodology. So just to give a little bit of background, the board has maintained the integrity of a methodology that's been in place for several years. The original methodology on the operation side does not follow the same methodology that's employed on the debt side. And this is something that we do see in communities that have a presence of substantial areas that are in a vacant, undeveloped state. And those areas are slowly sort of transitioned into a fully run, amenitized, residential populated development. So what happens over time is that districts often look at the methodology and think about ways to better depict the new state of development as the development begins to transition. And that's kind of where you guys are today. So instead of looking at a model that evaluates things like tracts and related acreage and so forth, again, thinking through and sort of envisioning that vacant state, you now are getting to a place where you've got developed residential units that have a comparable footprint based on the product size. So you have a few different things at your disposal. And what's nice is that from a legislative standpoint, there is some flexibility in the way that you can evaluate your methodology. And the reason for that is every community is not the same. In some cases, you may have a fully residential development. You may have a commercial component. You may have a mixed use development, right? So it's up to you as the board to examine what makes sense for your specific development. The most straightforward methodology that you could apply is what we would call the equalized methodology. Now, you don't see this commonly utilized because many times it doesn't make sense. This might be employed, let's say as an example, if every unit within the development was the same size, all multifamily, comparably sized single family units. There's some element that dictates the use of an equalized method, or maybe your expenses within your operating budget are equally shared, right? In large part. So you've got, let's say, an amenity center that benefits everyone equally, or something of that capacity, right? So there's some basis for which you're deriving the use of that methodology. Alternatively, the method that we see employed in 99% of the developments that we utilize, they choose to utilize the same methodology that was used at the time that the bonds were financed. The methodology that we're describing here is what is called the EAU, or Equivalent Assessment Unit methodology. And it's pretty straightforward and simplistic in its method. What it says is that you're going to analyze products based on your front footage. So you might have a 40-foot lot, 50-foot, 60-foot, etc. And what we're going to do is we're going to scale up or down your assessment based, again, on your front footage. So a unit that, or I'm sorry, a property that is sitting on a smaller lot has an assessment than a lot that's next to it that's of a larger footprint. Why is that? You're evaluating your infrastructure. And what the suggestion is that the larger homes have a larger footprint and impact on your public infrastructure. So as an example, you may see that your median sized home, if it's single family 40-foot, bears a 1 equivalent assessment unit. Conversely, and I'm just throwing random numbers, a 50-foot unit might be weighted at 1.2. And a 60-foot might be a 1.4 weighting, and so forth. So you begin to develop a system whereby, again, the larger the product, the larger the assessment imposition. This, again, follows your bond financing documents. And so there is a justification from a legal perspective because that methodology is imposed within your bond financing docs. It is evaluated by a series of professionals, your district engineers, your assessment consultant, your underwriters. There are various individuals that have taken a look and evaluated what you're presenting in order to come up with those metrics. Now, outside of those methods, you have a broad range of options available. You can go as complex as you want to. I would only caution you if you go down that road. I have seen people pull back from utilizing complex methods many times and revert back once they understand the implications. You can go as far as to say, my roadways, I want to look at those roadways and I want to evaluate trip generation, which is basically the usage that each one of those products has within the development, right? I can look at my stormwater and I can say each rooftop provides a certain runoff coefficient, and this impacts our waterways in this way. You can come up with a million different things to slice and dice your budget. What then is required if you go through that exercise? A, you have to engage a consultant with a hefty fee to perform that analysis. You then have to assign every single line item within your budget to a specific category that is independently evaluated. Then, on an annual basis, you need to be able to justify where you're putting any of those expense line items, to include, if you have any miscellaneous items, you need to be clear about exactly where those resources are being deployed. If you're going to, you can't, the concept of something being a catch-all is a bit vague. If in fact you end up doing road improvements, as an example, as a portion of your miscellaneous line item, and perhaps some, aquatic work or whatever the category is, you need to be able to justify that. So that is my only caution if you choose to go down a more complicated route. So guys, that's really the other example that I saw put on the table that someone raised is the idea of utilizing the assessed valuation as the basis for determining your assessments. My caution would be this. We all know that the assessed valuation is heavily affected by the time, the date, the year, I should say, in which you acquired your property, right? You brought your property 10 years ago and you have a 40-foot lot, it is not going to be the same valuation as a property that was recently acquired. So somebody that has a comparable footprint in terms of impact on your public infrastructure with the same lot is not going to be treated the same if you utilize the assessed valuation. So I will take a pause there and be happy to address any questions.
Yeah, the question I would have is you really haven't addressed, I think, the reason we wanted to go over methodology,
Mhm.
which is the coming of potentially hundreds of apartments.
Yep.
That's really what we wanted to discuss, which is how do we handle that in terms of lots? I don't think we need any new solutions. We're fine with lots. It's
Okay.
what do we do with all these apartments?
Which right now
Okay.
is just one line.
So, yep. So thank you for segueing into that. Absolutely. So what we're talking about here is, let's say as an example, you want to use your EAU basis. If it is in an undeveloped state and you said, we want to use this method, you would then apply a weighting that makes sense to that product based upon its current impact. Upon transition to platted units, it would then be assigned a similar assessment load as any other product of a comparable nature.
We're essentially using EAU on most of our lots since
Correct. Mhm.
they're already based on lot width. So
Yep.
the idea is that because we're having so many more individuals using the same facilities, that how can we perhaps more equitably assess units where, even though they're more compact, we still have a larger number of individuals using those facilities or amenities, whatever.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Carol, but also, what is the lot size of what the apartments will be located on? It's just not their footprint, right? They're buying a large amount of property from us to build the facility on, right?
So they're not buying any property from us. They're buying the property from some landowner, developer who is selling it to them. And
Okay.
then I don't know whether they're doing a build to rent or they're building a build to sale. So it's a rental, it's a build to rent.
Built to rent.
So then there's going to be a company that owns the big apartment buildings, right? So, or not big, but that owns this multi-unit apartment building, several multi-unit apartment buildings. So how do we deal with that, Leah?
So you're talking about while you are still in this phase, it hasn't been fully platted, developed. You're saying, how do we treat that segment of the development? Is that right?
Well, actually, no, I'm asking, because already, they're paying fees already. Well, how do
Mhm.
we deal with it once those properties are developed and the people who are renting those units have access to our amenities?
So this is a situation where they would be rented and not sold to individual users. Is that right?
That's what it sounds like.
Okay. Okay. I would suggest that we can take this back and look at it. But if in fact the impact is still comparable, if you understand that it's a certain size, and we can associate that with a specific product type, I'm not sure why it would be treated any differently.
So I'm kind of thinking is we're already getting paid a certain fee from who owns the property from our land, right? Our builder. Right?
As a, yeah.
Right,
as a-
so that gets divided into potentially whoever rents those.
It's in there, it'll be figured into their rent.
Right, right. But you're asking really, how do we incorporate those costs into our facilities that are gonna get
That much more usage.
that more?
Mm-hmm.
Because they are, individually, their road frontage,
But we're going vertical, we're not going.
Exactly. Exactly. And they're not going to be individually owned. They're going to be owned by one entity who owns all of those
There's gonna be
units.
people coming in and out. How do we manage
Yeah,
that?
and whatever you decide, if it is an individual landowner, whatever you decide, that bill can go to one person for several units, or it can go, you know what I mean? So whatever you decide, if there are, I'm just throwing out random numbers, 30 units that are assigned to one entity, they would receive a bill based on those 30 units.
168 units.
There you go.
And if I could, just add a couple, comments in here too, is that's okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, of course.
Number one is I don't think you can levy your special assessments based on the assessed value of a home. They have to be based on the special benefits that the property receives, and certainly valuation, of the actual property is should not be the predominant factor there. So I would encourage the board not to go down that road. In something like an apartment situation, we've seen this in other places before where, for example, the share of the recreation cost is the same as a townhome or a villa or an apartment or even a single family home that's a smaller home in your methodology. But perhaps something like stormwater management cost would be larger in a larger unit, or utility costs would be larger in a larger unit. So, and I think that's where you get into the EAU factors. But I think there certainly is a way for the district to fairly allocate the cost where there is really an equal benefit. And I think that's kind of been the focus, is making sure that that's fairly allocated, and that, owners of homes are not treated unfairly as compared to apartments.
So, and what would that look like as an assessment methodology?
So typically you would figure out what are your total recreation costs that you pay. And certainly landscaping costs could be, equal as well, because everybody's driving on the same roads and the same sidewalks. I think what you would find though is perhaps with stormwater, there may be a differentiation. So you probably would end up with a methodology like that where units are paying roughly equivalent unless they are creating, or getting a bigger benefit, like for stormwater. So you would have a situation where you have really two parts of your methodology. Here's the part where the costs are spread equally, and then here's the part of your budget where the costs are based on a front footage or a square footage basis. We've seen that before.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yes, so Mike, I agree with you. I understand what you're coming from, but from a data standpoint, how do we pull data from, I don't know, other units or other communities to understand what that delta looks like? I mean, that's gonna be the toughest part, is figuring out what costs extra we have to cover for on our part, and obviously end up, pushing down to them to cover for, and how do we do that?
Yeah, and that's really not what the board would be asked to do. I mean, ultimately, it would be your decision. But you would ask Leah and her group to put together a methodology that included, for example, and this is just an example, recreation, landscape, and everything as an equal assessment among all units, including one apartment unit. And then perhaps stormwater or something where it actually makes sense that a larger unit would pay more. And they would put that information together, and then they would show it to you and say, here's what the impact on the assessment levels would be should you choose to use this different benefit model.
Okay, I get that. So you basically are splitting your,
It's what Leah told us not
Yeah.
to do, splitting our line items. Right, Leah? You told us that's what you thought was going to be too complicated.
I would say that you want to be careful. You want to be careful not to make the model too complicated. I think there is some merit based on your circumstances to evaluate some of the properties differently. So I would want to take a look at that and see what makes sense. But yeah, what Mike laid out does make sense based on perhaps some disparity in use of your infrastructure. So if that's the direction you want to give me to sort of evaluate what those impacts are specific to those neighborhoods and really look at the residential piece as being more uniform, I can take that direction and give you guys guidance.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
yeah. Do we have any idea when these apartments might come online?
County last week, Barbara Finowson from South Lakes, and they have not submitted a pre-application yet, but they did come in for their meeting. The time frame we were told was maybe 26, but they'd have to have all of their.
Actually, I was thinking about the ones in front.
The ones in front have not been discussed yet, from what I heard from the county.
All right, so this could still be a couple of years away. But we now know how we can attack the problem.
It's a year. And they're gonna be moving with their planning, so it's not something that you can sit around with. It's gonna come, so.
Okay. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Mike.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Moving along, we're moving up to landscaping. Benchmark.
Hello, Nick Womazni with Benchmark. How
Hello.
are you guys?
Yeah, pretty good.
Move this up a little so you can still hear you and still look at your notebook.
So just to update, the trees are still ongoing. There is a list of places where we have to go back because of cars. We had received the email for 6825 over there by the west entrance. We went and looked at it. It was on that list. So when the contractor is done, we will go back to all of those places. And if we're gonna knock on the door to get them trimmed up or circle back, but they will certainly be done as well before it's all said and done, completed. The leaf cleanup is ongoing. The leaves seem to have fallen completely, so we're done there. So now we're gonna enter into a different phase where we're actually gonna aerate the turf, blow it out, along with the tree rings and the flower beds, and get all of that taken care of. And proposal number 81428 for 3 trees, 2 in Harmony Square, and then 1 at the entrance. They were done actually this week. 2 were done in the square today. They grounded out the stump. They're no longer a hazard, along with 1 in the entrance. And annuals. So we have them for May. However, I was wanting to know if,
Really? Because
Well-
it was December when they were put in.
say again?
I had something else. You said A1428. That was last
That
month.
was yeah, he was just updating us on the
Okay,
progress.
yeah, okay, got it.
Right, yeah, the one that was approved is
Yeah.
completed.
Okay.
Well, we can, put in the proposal before the 14th as far as for the flowers. If you want, I can call you for the selection of them, for the availability. Once we do that, we can put them in this month. That's just a phone call. I just want to get with you.
April.
Right, so I just get with you like next week. We can discuss what's available and then we can put those in all the roundabouts and the entrances.
Okay.
And that's all I have as far as the maintenance. We're still bi-weekly on the turf, still doing the irrigation. That's still routine. Come this month, now we'll probably start mowing every week. If I see it not moving past 4 inches, we may stay off of it because it's still really dry. The irrigation has improved. The grass is much greener this time of year than it was last year, so we don't want to disrupt that, so.
Couple questions. The verges, we had approved some funds to fertilize and weed and resod some areas.
So I plan on doing that this month. Starting next week, we want to start going ahead and removing all of the leaves. At the same time, making sure that those particular areas are break-free from irrigation. We've already started flagging and identifying a couple of the breaks. So that way when the sod does come, which is the last part, it's all gonna get water.
Okay. And then I was confused about some of the new proposals, because you and I had talked about some really small diameter trees that were on in between, like in front of the houses on, I think it was Little Blue,
Stem
no, not Blue Stem, Little Blue Lane or
Okay.
something like that,
in the courtyards.
in the courtyard in
Yes.
between. And I wasn't sure whether that was, because it says removals on Blue Stem, but Blue Stem is a different street than Little Blue. So it's,
So those,
proposals are confusing.
so those 3 trees with the addresses, those are the ones facing the pond. The ones that were leaning that we drove to, 1, 2, and 3, right next to the sidewalk. The reason I didn't submit those courtyards is because we had these ones and then there was questions on that. So I submitted just those and didn't want to add to that. It's for those 3 that you and I went and looked at.
Yeah, you have Little Blue Stem, but it's Little Blue Lane or something like that, I
Okay.
think.
But it is for those 3, in front of those 3 units that are leaning. It would be the first row of homes that you would see if you were looking at Harmony from 192, right in front of that pond.
Sorry. Do we want to discuss those now, the proposals?
Tree removals.
Yeah, so the first one is proposal 81424. To
Eight-
remove 3 trees. It doesn't say what kind they are. 3 addresses, and they're $536 each. Total of $1,610.01.
Well, I'll entertain a motion.
So I would, before we do, I would like to see like pictures of these potentially if possible in the report so we can look at it live. I haven't seen it myself, so I can't say, but it seems worth, if they're falling over, they need to be removed and dying. So I would
Yeah,
for it.
I know that we
can see
get
it.
reports in the months prior. We get pictures, but they're not associated with the proposals, so we're not, it's hard to evaluate when we don't know what is being referred to.
So I'll take a picture for each one of the trees and I will put the actual proposal number that they represent.
That'd be
Perfect.
awesome.
Okay.
That would be wonderful. We can table this one until.
That's fine.
Yeah, I don't think it's
Yep.
Not a safety issue.
They're not leaning towards the sidewalk. I can provide the pictures. We can follow back with this particular one, no
I mean,
problem.
yeah.
Okay, then we have 16 oak trees along the 192 fence. It's proposal 81431. It's $366 per tree. And we discussed this last month. It was, the concern is not just the fence, but also the foliage surrounding the trees that may be impacted by not addressing, lifting the trees. Is
So
that
this
correct?
particular stretch, the branches are lower than 3 feet. I went out there and looked, and we have a viburnum hedge and Bahia sod, especially on the right side of the west entrance. Now, on the left side, they're a little higher, but it's starting to thin in the Bahia, which it typically does, but it didn't thicken up like the rest of the areas did last summer. And I'm only concerned that without getting some sun in there, they've been neglected for a few years, that down the road, we may have washouts and dead vegetation from plants, maybe even some trees that are choked out next to them, like the pine trees as well.
From my perspective, I know I appreciate that you're looking out for our, landscape areas and for the shrubs that are existing there. It's just that we're tight and we have lots of landscaping issues to address, and I'm concerned about spending $6,000 on this item. That's just me. It may not be other board members. Other board members may feel that this is something that should be addressed now and not wait. That's just my.
Well, what is the downside in terms of washouts?
Well, some of them, they're on a bank. So we constantly have to maybe fill it in, especially on the east side of that west entrance. But then, just wash out dead spots, sand erosion, things like that. People do park over there. So low branches maybe scratching on some of the vehicles, and the fence. That would be besides the shrubs and things like that.
Isn't this right along 192? People are parking on 192?
So in the back, there's like the alleyway right where those courtyards are, but those trees, they're massive. They're very well established. So even when they park right on the side of the road, they're coming up to it. We're hitting those now with like hedge trimmers. It's just they're getting thicker. So I just wanted to bring it to your guys' attention.
If you could, capture a couple pictures of these ones as well, not all 16, just an example of what they look like on the next one, and then
You know,
just my opinion, we could table this and look at it at the next go around.
I can provide pictures for that
Yeah.
item as well.
And the last thing I would say is if it, you say there's 16, is there any way we could potentially stage it or subdivide it or something just to, using your judgment, if that's the bare minimum that needs to be done for doing this versus, is there something we can do to?
You absolutely could. I would definitely say the east side of the west entrance certainly would be the priority if I had to pick one. But once it's done, you will notice a huge gap. Maybe even 8 feet or more of trim trees and then like a wall of green. So, it might be an eyesore at that point, but we certainly can look into splitting that proposal into 2 parts if you're interested in that. But
Not-
there
not
is
many
that
ways like that.
downside that once I cut it,
Right, so you're talking about, there's both sides of the west entrance, but then also some along the alleyway off Little Blue, like on those houses further down there?
actually, yes, those 3 trees are right within probably 30 yards of those.
But this one with the 16 trees,
We'll, s-
when you and I looked at it, I thought it was on the west side of the west entrance, not the east side.
well, all right,
We
so.
didn't really look at anything. If you're coming into the community, it's going to be on the left side, but it's still the
Right.
west side of
Okay.
the west
I'm
entrance.
talking about if you're leaving the community on the right-hand side.
Right, but it's still the west side of the west entrance, yeah?
Right, so yes, if
Yeah.
we're pulling in on the first entrance, it would be on the left.
Right.
That area, I would say, would be priority 1 out of the 2.
Okay, well, you mentioned that, like cars park along there too. Are you talking about like along Five Oaks before it?
Just in one particular section by where those courtyards are, like I said, we've been using our hedge trimmers to get clearance when they're not there. But that's when we discover that, hey, like, this is getting pretty bad, they're getting pretty
Yeah.
thick. And our hedge trimmers are struggling that next, I would have to use a chainsaw.
So maybe in addition to the pictures, like it does need to be like a perfect map or something, but maybe just sketching, okay, there's, 9 trees on this side, 7 trees on this side, just give us more information is better.
Okay.
Okay, next proposal is for a sycamore tree replacement. for
Move
four-
to approve proposal 87858 for $459.13 to install a sycamore, 30-gallon sycamore with a gator tree bag, including installation fee.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And the last one is 31.
Excuse me,
Oh,
I voted aye also, but I forgot to
Oh.
put my sound on.
Hi, Joe.
Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry I'm late. It's
Yeah,
been a
no
bad
problem.
day.
And finally, we have the leaf removal on Burgess for almost $31,000. I had a question. I just, went online and started doing some searching. I mean, how do you guys propose doing this? It would take 480 hours.
They assumed that it would take about a month, a whole crew to come out here, about 40 hours.
And do it by hand?
Well, they have to rake them out, blow them out and pick them up by hand and then go to the dump. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just buy or rent an attachment to put on a mower?
Because some of these, we can't get a mower with parking in the trees. So we run into that now, because I would have loved to have
So Mark, we asked them to give us a quote for doing all of the residents' property and collecting all the leaves. This is what this is.
So, so,
Just to see what it
Well,
was.
just on the boulevards.
Yeah, the
or
main
on
road,
all the
yeah,
streets.
right.
so with all of the parking there, I couldn't get an equipment. I would probably only be able to do 30% with that equipment. And the rest would have to be hand, and then how far the dump is with the gravel
I already
truck.
said, I think this is the leaves. but-
Excuse me? Can I talk or do I have to? I don't know how to do this. I think last month, because of the various things, we asked for a quote to do the whole, all of Harmony
And that's where this
Main
came
road.
from.
versus just the boulevards. And that's why he brought us this quote.
Did we discuss this, but.
Well, it rained. Most of the stuff that was, had accumulated between the sweeping and the rain and all that.
It's still there.
It's-
I just cleaned up 10 bags and I still have another 10 bags to go.
Yeah, it's the stuff of nightmares.
Just on
at
my
this
property?
point. Yeah.
I
it's-
apologize.
And,
I
it- and
just-
half of the leaves that were there are probably down the storm drain already.
So
When
we're
you move
looking-
into a home that's under an oak tree, I mean, come on.
Right.
Like you don't realize you're gonna get leaves.
So
the
that's how
fall
we came
or
across
Florida?
that,
It's in the
was how
spring.
long it's gonna
Oh, well.
take, and we're thinking 2 to 3 dump trips per day as well. So that's how we came onto that. I will say, if we were entertaining it, let's say it didn't take the full 4 weeks and it was like 3, then we would, prorate it wouldn't be the full. Cause that's based on a crew coming out here for, 40 hours. So if I did it in 3, they could go somewhere else. And it would
So
be-
this would just be like a one-time cost thing, right?
Right, yeah, this is for all of the verges and us dealing with the
So
cars.
How long would this include? This would be like, from
It-
what, from like,
We would, if you said yes, then I immediately get on the phone and I start calling a couple of people and they probably would start 1st of April and we would be wrapping up towards the end if the cars and
so this
we
would
were-
be for like, what, a month,
a solid,
a solid month?
solid month, not 40 hours per guy.
30 grand per month? Are you kidding? Come on.
I don't think we're seriously entertaining
No.
this proposal.
All right, so
So
let's
I think
move
we
on.
can, yeah,
I agree,
All right,
but
But
thank you
thank
for the
you.
numbers.
Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you.
We wanted to know what it was gonna be.
Anything else?
No, the, improvements at Buck Lake Park and Harmony Square are done.
yep,
Yes?
they are complete, the plants, and I was just thinking that the irrigation was modified, but not to that extent to water Harmony Square, so I will follow up with you on Wednesday on that.
Okay,
Because we didn't have a significant jump at Buck Lake either, and I have new plants there, so.
right.
But yes, and I did wanted to bring that up, we did, audit all of the pocket parks at the end of last year. Moving forward, would you like me to bring, what would be the next priority? I know that's what the plan was, we discussed them doing in a priority. I would say that the dog park on Campfire, sod, that would be where I would go to next if you guys are interested. That's something I can bring back. for the-
Let's talk, because I remember one of the spots was, by Indian Grass, in that park by Indian Grass, or whatever that street is leading into, from Catbrier that leads into, Drake One. In between that house with the big white columns, and, because I remember that those
rose
crepe
hedges,
myrtles.
yes.
Yeah, I remember that was kind of in bad shape. And we can just, the last time we looked at it was what, November, December? It's now going to be April, so
We can do
quick run through.
we can do a reevaluation of the priority
Right,
list.
and that was what we discussed doing back then, was, let's start with I mean, my proposal was to spend more money, but we didn't decide that as a board, so now that we have gone several months, we've had some rain, it's springtime, let's look again at the areas that look like they need some work and decide what priority is.
Great to me.
Yep.
We can schedule that.
Yep.
Anything?
I have a couple things. I know Nick, you've been up here I appreciate y'all's hard work. The community looks great. And it's come up a long.
Thank you.
Not according to some of the folks who post on
Well,
Facebook.
you know, everyone's hating, everyone's got a hater.
Many.
So Middlebrook, there's a park at the end, which, or you posted a picture about them pressure washing. The area around it has a lot of ants, and it's the grass is destroyed.
In the middle?
No, there's a park at the end of it's in a cul-de-sac, the Middlebrook place.
Okay.
Lane. All that is destroyed. So I kind of bring this up to the board. How do we address that? There's been kids that got bitten by ants. It's very sporadic. There's like really no grass over there anymore.
So question, is it what my husband used to call bulldozer blight, the reason why there's no grass from just kids running around playing on the sod? Or is it because it wasn't irrigated, or?
I don't think there's any sprinklers over there.
It's Bahia.
For sure. It's Bahia.
Yeah.
And it's very just bare. And it's run down.
What was the
And,
name of it?
Middlebrook place.
Maybe we see about getting it treated for ants and then mulching it?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best idea. I don't think we need grass again over there, because it was just put in where it was already Bahia grass, so, that'll be my thing, if we get a quote for that.
Well,
For treating ants and stuff
Treating ants
and
and-
so,
mulching?
well, and to stack a question on top of that, how far back are you talking about? Because the property boundary where CDD ends and developer property begins is actually pretty close and is like actually adjacent to this house. So if it's like this, the more sandy stuff here, or is it like?
No,
right
it's,
next to
the cul-de-sac,
Right?
it's over to the left of it.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Right
so
there.
next to the playground,
Right there,
okay, yeah,
Yeah, right where the playground is where I'm talking about.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay.
It's destroyed grass, and there's
Yeah, yeah,
ants and everything,
it's balled on the map, you can see it. so.
yeah.
There's a play area at the end of Middlebrook.
So to touch on the ants a little bit, we're putting some shakers on the mowers to treat some of these beds. And I have a pretty strong chemical that target spray and kill the massive mounds. I can provide a quote for top choice at the playgrounds, and then we just treat the rest if you're interested in that. Like we did with the
Buck Lake Park.
because we get the revisit if we're unsatisfied.
Parks.
Just the playgrounds where the children are.
Yeah, yeah.
Heavy traffic areas like, I also would say back where the walk path is, even though summer's about to take over and we're not gonna have a school, but there's still a huge amount of children.
I've
there.
seen some plays and stuff, but I think parks are probably the biggest.
Well, we're gonna start treating that
Playgrounds.
right away.
Playground,
Like I said, we're
yeah,
gonna put the
playground.
shakers on the mowers and they can treat them. And then if it's real bad, I'll come over there with a liquid. But I think maybe top choice at the parks would be something we can look at, and maybe
At the parks or the playgrounds?
parks, playgrounds. The
Just
playground,
around the playground.
Playgrounds.
Just
yes,
around
the playgrounds.
Any other quick, kind of request comment I had is, I seen them replacing the flower beds, on Five Oaks. The main area where Five Oaks and, roundabout. I was thinking of doing maybe a perimeter around the flower beds, like a plastic border that would not allow weeds and stuff to come in. I think we've had mulch getting spread out and stuff like that, so if that's something we want to accompany and request on, I don't think.
For
I
the
don't
new
know
apart-
that any border is gonna prevent weeds. Those weeds are growing up right inside the bed.
Right, but it will,
Where are we talking about? I'm sorry.
At the roundabout.
roundabout,
Flowers.
Five Oaks and, is it Primos? Caprior.
Right.
Yeah, they were putting new flowers in. But I think it's
They
just,
were?
I mean, it would cost that much
Weeding.
to do a nice perimeter around the flower beds where there's mulch and then give the transition to grass.
If I do that in the one, you're gonna want a quote for all of the annual
Well, I'm
beds.
just bringing it up to the board. I think it looks cleaner and I also think that the weeds or grass as well, travel and mulch travels out and it's just kind of a sloppy design. So
Oh.
I'm just bringing it up.
Okay, I can look into,
Let's say we,
I can provide a proposal to put the plastic border for all of the annual beds. No problem. I would also include that island though, because that does wash out. So on the end caps of
right,
the
and then
main
we pay for
entrance.
more mulch down the road, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, the mulch, I don't think we'll ever escape it here because the volume of blowing and leaves and
Oh,
maintenance here.
okay.
So I think every other year, we're gonna have a conversation for mulch, but it will help keep the soil in, prevent like erosion and, make a border. So I mean, it will look cleaner.
yeah,
Hopefully.
that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. Nick.
thank you.
Have a good night.
It was good seeing you
You
guys. Have a
too.
wonderful
soon.
holiday.
You too.
I'll get back with you on that.
Next up, we have the field manager.
Hi, my name is Jorge, the field service supervisor. I got here something from the boats. You asked me to get some quote for the seats. The first one is for the 20-foot pontoon boat. The second one is just to fix some sections of the sun tracker, 16-foot. And the other one is the other company I have, the JR Mobile Services. And the last one is just for the center console of the other boat. Those are the two companies I found.
So, the first two quotes from J and M are the same thing as the one quote from JR Mobile Services, right? And then we've got the console, which J and M provided us something on, but not JD Mobile, JR Mobile, right?
Well, J and M is clearly a lot cheaper.
Yes, half the price.
Yeah. Yeah, half
Well,
price.
yeah,
Sure.
not half, but
And it's for marine, the seat cover is gonna be marine, seat covers, so it's
marine quality.
marine quality, yeah.
Well, it doesn't say that on their estimate. So if it's not on the,
Yeah, both of them, they told me that it's marine,
I know, but if it doesn't say it on the estimate, that doesn't
doesn't
mean
say.
they're gonna do it.
Mhm.
Know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because they're not obligated to, because it doesn't say it here.
Well, we could move approval based upon it being added.
Okay,
I can ask them to
Yeah.
fix the estimate and put.
I would entertain such a motion.
I move to approve J and M Upholstery and Supplies estimate for boat 1 of 3,000, boat 2 of 800, and boat 4 of 350 for center console. Provided that those replacements are marine grade upholstery.
Mhm.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Well, hold on.
Oh.
So this, want to make sure this other fee that's mentioned here at the bottom, that does not apply, right? Or is it additional fee? for-
Yeah, he was talking to me about it, that we can delete that. I'm gonna talk to him and give you the information. But I can remove that $500.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're,
Right. I mean, it wasn't in the motions. Want to make sure. we're-
correct. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
thank you. You like-
Quick question to the board, if they come back and say that they can't incorporate that terminology into the quote, what do we do from there? Do we come back and revisit our quote, or our estimates?
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, the JR Mobile Services doesn't say marine grade, right?
No. Seems more formal, but doesn't say it.
Right.
Okay.
Anything else?
The East Tower is, we're gonna be doing that between Tuesday and Wednesday. We're
Next
gonna be renting a lift to reach that area because we don't have a ladder to reach.
Ah,
And you'll be painting the signs.
The
painting
signs,
over
yeah.
signs.
About the splash pad, the motor that we put last time, it broke. They came, remove it and replace it. They put a new one. Now, and full sure, they put the new equipment for the chemicals and the chlorine. And we still have to empty the whole tank, clean it up, and be ready to use for some time during the days until we
So-
get the, Huh?
Until we get the computer.
no,
No, we still don't have a computer.
no, we still don't have the
And what's the,
code for the computer.
and so,
Still looking and the company I have hired, I told them to get the estimate for that. They haven't find a real company to come and work with that computer. It's being hard to.
there's gotta be, I mean, Infomark should have some
Yeah,
suppliers.
He got another one, bigger company, but saying that it's gonna be like more expensive. The one that works for Disney.
Well, it's just, summer is around the corner now and we
Yeah.
still don't have an operational splash pad. And, I don't blame the residents for being angry about it because this has been going on for month after month. It's this thing, it's that thing, it's another thing, but we've been waiting for this computer for several months now and we don't even have quotes. So it doesn't seem reasonable to me that with a company like Infomark, we don't have multiple quotes on replacing that computer by now.
We're gonna,
It's not your fault.
Huh?
Not your fault.
you're not who she's talking to.
I'm not who you're vilifying here, not who you're complaining about.
Or I'll reach out to you, because I want to come down. I have yet to come down there and you can show me how to turn it on and off.
yeah,
I'll send you an email so we can sync up and,
this next week, I'm gonna empty the tank,
okay.
clean the tank inside because that water has been sitting there for a year. So it's not safe to use it. We're gonna remove the water,
Yeah.
refill, clean and refill, and I contact you to,
And then basically it'll be on demand.
Hmm?
You'll be able to turn it on, right?
yeah,
It won't dance.
Yeah.
It'll
Well,
just be stationary.
It doesn't have to dance. I mean, I'm sure the kids would just love it anyway.
yeah,
It's
we
a-
can keep
it's
the
water.
filter running, 24 hours to keep the water clean and running. We just, after I finish with the water and all that, cleaning everything, I let you know and teach you and
Can you just
see
leave
the
it,
hours that we're gonna have it on and
can you
keep an
just
eye
leave
on
it on?
Huh?
Can you just leave it on?
for the whole day.
Yeah,
Yeah, or we can turn it on at 7 a.m. and
Well, okay, so between the interactions, whatever conversation you had with these vendors doing these repairs, or with the other properties that Mark mentions that, or, manages that might have these, is there a strong reason to or not to just leave it running? Like, is there a justification for, you know, the
Because
water being cleaner or?
the
the stuff
timer
doesn't
is
work.
not working.
Right?
Yeah.
So, then, understanding that, is there any, are we going to,
I mean,
is there a big drawback?
Well,
More
we're
electricity,
using
yes.
more electricity, number one. Number two, it's more wear and tear on everything, longer term. Number three, there are neighbors who live around there who may not want to hear a water fountain going 24/7.
no, but I liked his idea of, go over in the morning, turn it on.
Mhm.
Last thing at night, turn it off. That way it's running for the kids all day.
Can I interject?
Yes.
Can you hear me? I think it was last month or the month before, we talked about some of us learning how to do it and us just turning it on and turning it off every day so that it doesn't run all day, but we could leave it on in the evening a little longer than the field service people are here, because in the summer it does stay light later. And I'm willing to be one of the people trained to turn it off. Not willing to be a morning person, but I'll be a night person. So, and also I wanted to point out, Celebration had the same problem with theirs that we did, or that we're having. And I think they finally decided to just replace their system because the parts aren't, it's so hard to get the parts now. And so I think that's been a lot of the issue, hasn't it? Or do I remember wrong?
We've replaced a bunch of parts. I don't know what the problem is with replacing the computer. It's not clear whether it's that it's an old part or whether it's that there aren't contractors who want to do it or what the story is. I don't know.
Yeah, because we've had a few companies come in and try and then throw their hands up and say they can't do it.
Yeah, I don't
So,
About the
yeah.
computer, I think that was about other things. We've had to replace and
Mm-hmm.
so
Oh,
much.
no, I know. We've practically replaced the whole thing, but it's, yeah. But it's hard to get bids. As you said, they should have more bids. I think there's not a lot of people willing to take it on.
Any other questions? I don't know
Nope.
about-
Well, so, I had emailed, I sent a report, complaint sides at the community and never heard back from Angel. Was there some issue with the pool? Like, there was like, people were saying it was cloudy or something.
Oh, yeah, we came that night, Brad and I, and work on it. And we had it closed for one day.
Okay.
Because we're cleaning the oaks trees, the seeds or the leaves,
The
they were stuck
flowers.
like a softball ball inside the pipes. Yeah,
Okay,
so we remove it and it's running now, it's good.
okay. And we haven't had any issues with the heater since it's been replaced?
The heater is working fine and I'm getting quotes I had 3 companies come and then waiting for the quotes for the motor. The bearings are not that good working. The noise that people heard
Okay.
on that day,
Okay.
yeah, it's getting to the end. The motor it's not gonna last like 1 more year. Mhm.
Okay, and that's just for the
The swing club, yeah.
right? And is that, there's more than one pump, right? Like,
The pump, yeah.
or it is just for the one pump?
I thought we replaced.
The big one.
those.
And I thought there was some redundancy. Might be getting used.
Hmm?
There's just one pump and, yeah,
Yeah, it's the big pump. It's like this big.
right.
The impeller and all that. Yeah.
Right.
It's expensive.
And we don't have any warranty or service
I
contract.
just have one. I'm waiting for 2 more because they came and waiting for the papers to
Well,
receive them.
The quotes, but if we I don't think it was replaced all that long ago, so would anything still be under warranty is what we're asking.
Yeah, they saying that they just last like 4 years, 3 years because they always on. That's the problem.
Well, did we, I mean, we don't have staff here who know whether those motors were replaced in the pools within the last 2 or 3 years, and if there would be a warranty on them.
I heard that that one's been there for like 5 years now.
Well, it's something for Infomark to look into and see if there's still a warranty and if there was any service contract.
Yeah, it's a 3-year item on the reserve study.
Oh.
This might be time.
All right. Anything else for Jorge?
Thank you.
Thank you.
District Engineer.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
4 things for discussion tonight. The first is what direction we want to take on the Blazing Star Lane alleyways. I'm not quite sure if Jennifer, if Angel heard back from Waste Management's insurance carrier, if they're going to chip in on some of the costs. Have not, okay. Okay. So I spoke to the contractor. He was willing to hold the bid 30 more days, which today would be the 30 days, at which time if y'all decide not to move forward, they would not honor it if you're gonna ask them to do it under 30 days. So, at this point, you can deny the bid. You can accept the bid. You can rebid it when the time is right, based on y'all's budgets. It is pretty bad if you haven't been out there and seen it. I know the homeowners are not happy with the mess the garbage trucks have made, but I am looking for some direction or dialogue, what y'all want to do with Blazing Star Lane alley repairs.
So are there other options aside from, well, there was a question as to whether the repair is just on the corner or it's to redo the whole alley. And I think it's just on the corner,
It's
right?
doing that intersection, just that intersection.
Just the corner. So are there alternatives to spending $100,000 to repair one corner of one alley?
You can Band-Aid it, but it's only gonna get busted up again if we, just gonna put down some asphalt millings or something temporary. Right now you got all that dirt that's been rutted out. I mean, you can go cheap and put asphalt millings there, but it's not gonna last too long.
How long is not too long?
Well, it's a heavy truck, so it'll rut it after a couple weeks easily. It'll get hot in the summertime. It doesn't have a lot of strength once it gets warm. It won't tear it up as bad as it's tearing up the dirt, but the asphalt itself, as you saw the photos from last time, I mean, it's,
Oh, no, I know what it
yeah,
looks like.
it's, Yep.
I've been there.
So with our discussion earlier, and I know you have a action item to do kind of an assessment of the alleyways in terms of, how soon and how urgently do we need to undertake these different capital projects. Just based on the reserve study from a couple of years ago, doing those alleyways was, I think it was in the 25 or 26 timeframe. So not trying to jump ahead of your analysis, but if we were at some future point doing a, mill and repave of those neighborhood G alleyways, what it seems to me like my hunch is that the delta to a project like that to incorporate these the change at this corner would seems I don't know. My hunch is that would be a lot less than all the staging and everything to just do the one corner standpoint. Like it would make more sense to
I mean,
roll it into.
realize the cost we got for the other one. You may be talking about between $500,000 and $700,000 for the next project. So yeah, to absorb this would be mass, but I don't know if you guys, when we have our budget discussion in April, have that in mind. But I know that the reserve study may be different from what actually exists.
Sure.
But yeah, so when I go out there and look at the other elements, whether all of it needs to be done or just a couple of the roads, alleyways themselves are really bad and the other ones are okay, I'll try to color code it or prioritize them. But
So, oh, go ahead.
that $100,000 quote or rough estimate is to do the whole alleyway on Blake.
No,
That's to do that.
no, it's just
Just
to
patch
do it.
that,
Yes.
$100,000 patch that.
It's 88,000 to be exact, but yeah, it's to do
Around,
it's to do reconstruction of the base and asphalt, add the concrete ribbon curbs, do the striping. I mean, it just, listen,
We paid $600,000 to do how many?
Everything, yeah.
Right, well,
for the 600,000 with just milling resurfacing. But listen, I'm not,
I'm not blaming you.
No,
dude,
no,
man.
it's
I'm
it's
just
been
saying-
out-
I'm
it's been
just saying,
outrageous.
Well, and there's overhead with any of these, all
Repair.
this, staging and everything, all that equipment has to be mobilized, so. My hunch is maybe we look at a more Band-Aid approach for now with an eye toward in the next 2 to 5 years.
Oh, that's,
Should the blinds.
that's unplanned.
We have
Unplanned.
the screens, we have the screens that we
Yeah,
can,
the screens are not doing it.
right, well, can we move those screens maybe?
Sure, there's something I can do.
You
Thank
can
you.
move chairs.
Those are my thoughts anyway, is that
No,
You
we,
can
put
move
my
over there.
sunglasses
I agree with you, and I think
Move to that chair, maybe.
it seemed a very costly amount.
and not that we think it's
Small
gonna get any
area.
cheaper, but.
Right, well, should be cheaper,
Or
but.
just have you sit there the whole time.
Okay.
Thank you, Jorge.
Obviously needs to be fixed, but can we patch it up in a?
Yeah, I'm all for something to tide us over till the whole thing is due.
All right, let me get with
Guys-
Mark on getting a quote on some asphalt millings, the thickness and the square, and we'll get a quote on that to apply it, so.
Yeah, a short-term solution, because we know we're 1 or 2 years away from having to redo all those alleys anyway. And when they're out there doing a big job, they've got all the equipment there. I'm sure part of this is you got all the overhead of just coming and having to set up for the job.
Mike, question, since we did receive a bid, do we have to make a formal vote to deny it or not accept it? So I can contact the contractor?
Yeah, so this was, you got bids, but this was not over the bidding threshold, was it?
No.
It wasn't over.
It was
88,000.
Yeah, so no,
not
you don't,
Public advertisement.
I mean, you can notify them, but they don't have any protest rights, and so I wouldn't couch it in terms of creating protest rights, but certainly you can communicate with them informally.
Okay,
Answer is no.
all right, well, then that puts on hold. The second part was if you were moving forward, we'd have to get some easement documents to do the corner clips, but that's on hold for now, so. Because we're requiring other people's private property to do the bigger curves.
Sure.
Next topic, as we talked about briefly, was Osceola County called me on March 25th, a gentleman named Sean, to inform me that the address has been vacated when the school shut down, that we, the CDD, would have to reestablish a new address for 3 purposes: run power to the building, to get a meter set up and for billings. If we plan on doing a phone landline, I'm not sure if those are even popular anymore. And for the dumpster, they're gonna have to need a special billing address for the new facility. So if you guys are still deliberating for the next month or two on the bigger issue with the maintenance facility, I can continue making that request to the fire department, get a new address, and get it back resubmitted to keep things moving along.
Yeah, I think we should do them in parallel.
Okay,
I agree. It's gonna cost us some for engineering fees and application fees, et cetera, but at least we're showing good faith and we've got a plan B in case we need it.
okay. The next item was something that Lucas had wrote up last month on Middlebrook Place. There's a pond north and south of Middlebrook, which belongs to the golf course. We reviewed the plat and the South Florida Water Management permit, and to confirm that those ponds are to be maintained by the CDD. So I gave Vincent, Carrie, and Jorge the green light to go ahead and do the one on Middlebrook, the north side of Middlebrook, that's got the extensive cattail growth, so.
And you do.
Yep. Sir, and then the last thing I have is inspections of the alleyways, stormwater ponds, both for the structures and for the cattail growth, to come back for the April 25th budget workshop with a priority for what can be done next year and what can be delayed for the years ahead, so.
So a couple questions, just back to the Blazing Star alleyway. Your quote was just a little more than half of what, your estimate was a little more than half of what came in. Can you help us understand why there was such a disparity?
Sure, I'll tell you what the process is. So the Department of Transportation, or DOT, produces every 6 months an updated database on all the costs they get for their projects. Linear feet of curb and gutter, sidewalk, sod, inlets, pipes, things like that. And they do it for each region of Florida. We then use that database as a starting point to get the unit costs for different elements. Knowing that DOT's projects are so large, there's economies of scale, multi-million-dollar projects. So we take those unit costs and we add an adjustment factor, 20%, 25% for small-scale projects. We then add a contingency edits, because everything post-COVID has been crazy. I think the speaker from last meeting, a couple of years ago, if the engineer's estimate was more than a certain percentage, we were obligated to go back and revisit why it was so far off. Post-COVID, it's been a guessing game, to be quite honest with you. The contractors are fat and happy. They're extremely busy. They're getting the prices they're putting on the street for quotes. And it's hard for me to make a good, educated business, not decision to give you a number and just double it for the sake of what's going on in the economy right now. But we do have a method in place on the DOT database, recent bids we've required, adjusting them for small scale projects, and then putting a contingency in there depending on what we're going to advertise and when it's going to get built. So it's about as honest as I can be, Carol. I don't know why it's been large and small, they've been coming outrageously high. And when I use the DOT database, understand they do multi-million-dollar projects. So if I took those unadjusted, I would be accused of not doing my job, but we acknowledge that and we have to adjust them accordingly. So
David, I got a question. So, in the industry, we have, kind of grades on how well suppliers or vendors or people who do their job, how well they do it, how perform. Do you guys track, do you guys grade different suppliers based on what you quote out to them and how well they do their job and, those kind of things, how far they bid and those type of things? You understand what I'm asking you?
I think so. When we get more than one bid, if we're lucky enough, the job is big enough to attract more than one bidder, we do set the spreadsheet to compare them to each other,
Right.
to compare them to our number. And there's games they play at the lump sum stuff to hide some of their profits. If you have a lot of things in there that has a lot of line items with unit costs, it's a little bit more easier to track what's going on. The small scale stuff, it's like asphalt, base, sub-base, ribbon curb, mobilization. So there's a little bit of where they're going to hide their profit in there. But we try to track and to see if there's any big outliers compared to the database that are available.
Okay.
We sometimes ask the contractor point blank, and
Why
sometimes he
does-
said we were too busy. We just have to throw some numbers, and if we get lucky, we'll get it. If not, they don't waste too much time if they're too busy, because it does take a lot of effort to double check the quantities, go out in the field, do the proposals. When you see what I get in the public bids, it's pretty thick. They're getting bonds and all the paperwork from the banks and it's a lot of effort on their part. So, the small one like this one, I just called 3 or 4 contractors that I knew, 2 declined because they were too busy. I got a local guy with Junior Davis, the guy that we use all the CDD work, which is PJ. This was outside his comfort zone. And then Gregory and CCR, the guys we use for a lot of small scale drainage projects. And, when I got the number, my jaw hit the ground as well. I mean, it's
Yeah, fair.
when I think what's being done there for the numbers, it's hard to justify.
Next question is, so, clearly our ponds are, they're shallow at the edges and they're deeper, our detention or retention ponds. But there's a lot of debris going, just thinking, just looking as I was sweeping and raking yesterday, the leaves, and got a storm drain right in front of my house and seeing how much probably went down there. A lot of that's ending up in the ponds,
Mhm.
right? Dan, do you know in our reserve study, we have anything regarding cleaning out our ponds over a 10, 15, 20-year period? Is that something that we need to think about?
Not yet. That issue is more of a water quality concern than it is it has nothing to do with flooding. Whatever's below the water level has nothing to do with flooding because that volume is occupied by the groundwater year round. But as that shallows up, then yeah, it gets hotter during the summer. You get the algae blooms. Some of that stuff releases the nutrients in the water column. So it gets to be a water quality issue. But some people will go 20, 25 years before they dredge. It's very costly, very disruptive. They're on the average about 6 or 8 feet deep. Maybe as long as you guys been in with your leaf litter, maybe they filled up 12 or 18 inches. I don't know, unless you go in there and do what they call a bathymetric survey, you see how much has been compromised. But it does have nothing to do with flooding, because everything is below the water level.
Well, but we've just had, what was it called? Elemental?
Well, that's when the stuff is getting stuck in the pipe.
Right,
That's different. If you're talking about what's
Right.
accumulating in the pond bottom versus what's getting stuck in your pipe, yeah, that you can do more of getting the pipes blown out every
Yeah.
couple of years or something.
There's a drainage repair allowance in the reserve study.
okay.
that
Yeah,
would
they just
probably
put a
cover-
hose in there, the high pressure hose, and they blow it out. That ends up in your pond. At least your pipes are open for full
I see.
conveyance when needed.
And it seems to have worked really well. We've had some heavy rain the last few weeks in both areas. I don't think it's been any.
So are there other areas that look like they may need the same kind of treatment? Or
I've
we
only
just
heard of
wait?
3 areas that flooded. It was Caprior, Five Oaks, and the Estates. The Estates was completely different with the flooding occurring in the backyards. But I'm not aware of any other chronic localized flooding. And if there is, by all means,
Okay,
let me
we'll
know.
just deal with it when we get to
But,
it.
cleaning a pipe out with a hydrant, that's a cheap fix, to go out there and
Uh,
blow it out, so.
Well, a number of these ponds have been in place for 20 years now. So is that something that we need to start thinking about adding to the reserves? I mean, there's probably a dozen or more ponds that have been in place for 20
Yeah,
years.
before I would recommend dredging, I would recommend doing maybe a bathymetric survey, which is a lot cheaper to see if they truly have filled up a lot. And you're talking, a guy gets on a little boat, gets a little piece of equipment, bounces off the bottom and see if it's deep. These are all dug to be 6 or 8 feet deep. If he comes back and says, now there's 6 or 7 feet deep, I'm not gonna worry about you guys spending a lot of money on dredging if you've lost a foot over 20 years, but. I mean, we can budget for 2025 bathymetric surveys of some of the key ponds, that's, you're only talking about a couple $1,000 to do that per pond versus dredging is going to be a big, huge number.
Mhm.
I think it was the one pond between Feathergrass and Middlebrook that we just know it was not dug out deep enough in the first place. So that's maybe kind of been in the back of our minds.
Well, I'm also thinking of the pond, Long Pond, which, borders Bucklet.
Right.
Because I see there's some really narrow places where it looks like vegetation is really thickening up the waterway. And my concern is that it's not going to be, as effective and that it's going to be pretty clogged within a year or two.
I'll look here if I went out there walking around them, so.
Yeah.
Well, do keep in mind that Long Pond is extremely deep.
In the bigger areas, then you get next out with the pedestrian bridges and gets back open again, so.
No, but I'm talking depth.
Yeah, but not near the pedestrian bridges where it's really narrow.
Okay.
Those are the problem areas.
A bathymetric survey would.
Yeah, address. But yeah. That was it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
David, watch your
Thank
head.
you all very much.
Thank you.
That's over you guys now, so.
District Council.
Good evening. Once again, I'm happy to report that everything has been pretty quiet in our office. We have not been engaged on the O&M methodologies yet. I think it's wise to have Infomark be studying that issue and then let us take a look at it once they come up with some options. There is one piece of legislation that you're going to have to deal with before October 1st. And that is the state of Florida. It's not been signed by the governor yet, I don't believe, but the legislature passed a provision that requires all special districts to come up with some performance standards and goals and objectives, and as well as the criteria to figure out whether you've met those goals or objectives, and then to do a report every year outlining whether you've met your goals and objectives or not. So if the governor signs that, our first one would be due in October, and then it would be an annual requirement after that. So I'll defer to Infomark on if they have some ideas on that first, and then certainly we're happy to help if y'all need our help on that. So that's kind of the big one that I wanted to make sure that the board was aware of. And other than that, I have nothing else to report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
So that's a self-assessment, or is that like an external?
Internal.
Okay.
Yeah, the board would approve, the performance measures, the goals, and the board would evaluate whether or not, you've met those with the assistance of the district manager. And certainly we'll help, but, like I said, we're trying not to work more than you need us to, in any subject matter.
I would think Infomark is just gonna end up with some sort of boilerplate that they can apply to most all of their districts. Yeah, that's what I think is gonna happen.
Splash pad upside. And then one other question, I know I haven't gotten it to it yet. There was like that mandatory ethics self training we had to go through. Was there like a deadline on that?
December 31st.
There is. Yeah, the Supervisor Castle is correct, December 31st.
Okay.
Yeah, just a reminder for everybody because it's almost April, right? And I haven't done anything about it.
If you're not a supervisor on December 31st, you
that's
still gotta do it?
Yeah,
The legal answer I'm going to give you is yes, because that's what the law states. However, the reporting that you've met the requirement would not take place until June of 2025.
Got it.
Anybody want a CDD board seat?
Okay. Thank you very much. Anything else for our?
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Let's see, now we have the district manager. We've done the first part. We had a resolution designating some officers.
Correct, so,
You should come up here so the microphone can hear you.
Oh, and someone had a question as to who some of these people were.
Yes, I think Jennifer will address it.
I can address it. So this is adding Howard as a signer for the district. He'll be working with Angel. So that's who Howard is. And Stephen Bloom is the head of our entire finance team. So he is listed as the treasurer.
He's been on our,
Yes, he's been on your designation of officers.
yeah, he's an Infomark employee.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Both are Infomark employees.
Take these off.
Other than that, there's been no other adjustments. So,
Move to approve resolution 2024-07.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
and just so the board is aware, it does say assistant treasurer, but that is not a requirement. So that's why it was left blank.
Moving on to business items. We have a request from the school to reserve the pool for ESE students. I thought it was a fine idea.
I didn't realize why we needed to approve this.
I-
like,
I-
why
I
the
didn't
board
think-
needed to approve it.
I didn't either, but let's just approve
Move
it.
to
Move.
approve.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We gave Angel
Yeah.
district management authority.
I thought we did, but
Yep.
it's still here, so.
Good enough.
All right, the biggie.
Well, a discussion of the golf course maintenance facility. There's probably not that much to discuss at this meeting. I finally got to talk to the owner of the golf course yesterday afternoon. He sent me that appraisal you've seen late in the afternoon. I asked Angel and Mike a few questions at about 5 o'clock yesterday. They got back to me at 6 and 7. Thank you very much. And, so that's why there's not a whole lot in your inboxes a whole lot about what the options are in terms of financing. I would simply say, watch your emails closely because I will be pushing this hard the next couple of weeks to have Angel and Mike get you stuff on financing options. I mean, Mike's response was, I think you gave me 5 different options as to how to finance it and a recommendation as to which one you thought was best. So there's a lot to work out. I understand. We all want to know more. If I hadn't actually done some pushing yesterday, I probably still wouldn't have the number. So, that's really where the discussion is at. I think we're all in agreement if we can make this work, that the facility is actually, it just ticks every box we want. So.
I don't know that I agree with that, but it's a lot more than we need,
Well,
a lot more than we'll use.
Oh, agreed. That's why we can then rent out a fair bit of it.
Yeah, and the CDD as a landlord is problematic from my perspective. But Mike, can you tell us, do other CDDs rent out some of their property?
Yes, we have had situations where that's occurred. The one thing I would say is you may lose your real estate tax exemption for that, so you'd need to build that into the financial analysis of it if you're renting it out to, a for-profit business or using it as a non-governmental purpose. So that's one of the things you got to look at. The second thing you'd have to look at is if you are going to use tax exempt bond or note money, that may not be allowed under your bond covenants that you would be entering into. Your existing bonds aren't really an issue. It's just how you would finance it on a moving forward basis. That would be something you'd have to look at as to whether or not you'd be allowed to rent that out under the IRS guidelines. So those would be the two main considerations with renting it out. But we do have districts that do that from time to time. Usually where we see it is in an amenity center where there's a developer who's still there, and we rent out part of the amenity center for their sales office, for a few years.
But this would be more of a permanent thing, not just a temporary thing. We'd be renting out to Benchmark for their equipment and their supplies, and we'd be renting out to possibly the golf maintenance facility. That could be temporary, but it could be more permanent depending on what they build. And I don't know, I think there was talk about renting out other spaces there too.
Correct. Yeah, no, the building is a lot more than we need.
So that's a concern for me, plus the management of it.
Right. So piggybacking on that question, if it were being used as a landscaping staging area for the landscaping being done around Harmony, and say that was that would be part of whatever landscaping contract we have with our landscaper, would that still count the same way as if we were just renting to some third party for whatever reason? Would we have any relief since it were still being used for a public landscaping maintenance use?
I think you would want to make that argument to your bond counsel, and they're the ones that have to give the opinion. But again, the two issues that I raised, are really federal tax issues. If you don't use tax exempt bond money, you don't have those issues. But you're absolutely going to have on an annual basis the real estate tax issue, which again, people do leases all the time, as I'm sure everybody's aware, where the tenant either pays the taxes or it's built into the rent. So there are issues that can be resolved, but I just want to make sure that if you spend tax exempt money, that there's going to be covenants on how you can use the facilities that are paid for with that money.
Okay.
So follow up on that last statement. Would there be any similar restrictions on, so if the bond, is used to purchase this property, but then we use that property for the access and revenue generation of, say, the RV behind that, would that be subject to that same bond restriction?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. There's a lot of noise. So can you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
So if we use the bond to purchase this property, and in doing so, we're now able to utilize our existing property behind it for the RV storage lot, would that be subject to that same restriction?
I think if you're using, yeah, I mean, again, it's gonna be bond counsel, not me, because I give the state law opinion, but I would think that if you got bond counsel approval to do the RV lot before, and we've done that as, through your recreation power, and it's open, to everybody, I think you could probably be able to get there on that issue. But again, it's gonna end up being your bond counsel who makes that call, not me.
We will reach out to your bond counsel. And get some answers for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, if we decide to go the bond route.
I would just say that would, if we do go that route, it would be, I think, beneficial to CDD to rent out that original RV lot.
If we do is there access through that property to the lot that's viable?
We might have to make one, but it is on the back side of where.
Yeah, they're contiguous. We couldn't, I don't think we could just take a Bobcat back there and, blaze a new road.
Right.
We'd have to, the PD would probably have to be, modified for,
But there'd be
there'd be a process, but it's right there.
Just a.
There are some possibilities. Definitely. So watch your emails. I will be pushing this over the next couple of weeks to try and get as much information to you as possible. I want to get you guys more information than you really want.
Bring it on.
Because I would like a lot more information too. So we'll see how this all works. Obviously, we cannot discuss it, amongst ourselves, but we can all get it back to Infomark. And just like I did with the appraisal, I mean, all I did was get permission to share it with you, sent it to Angel and said, please share this with everybody. So, we got done right there at the end.
The more we know by the budget work, the better.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. The consent agenda.
Consent, just a second. I had my hand raised. I guess I don't know how
I'm
to do
sorry.
this.
Oh, yes, I see it now.
I just had another thing that maybe would work or help with the tax problem if we for the community maintenance facility over there, if or at the old golf course building, could because we talked about Benchmark using it for their stuff. Could we buy the equipment and then Benchmark rents it from us? Would that help with the tax problem?
Oh,
I don't know, but there's some, I just thought maybe it was something to think about.
No, but we want to rent to more people than just Benchmark. There is really enough space there for us, to rent out.
Okay,
A good size, a good bit of that building.
yeah, okay,
Yeah,
it was just a
be
thought.
rented.
I haven't been over there to look at it yet, so I guess I need to get that on my
Yeah,
schedule. All right.
okay. Consent agenda.
So I did, there were just Brenda, thank you so, I don't think she's on, but she did a wonderful job with the minutes. They're no longer near verbatim, but they still are capturing a fair amount and they're much shorter. There were just a couple things. I didn't even make note of them because it wasn't really worth it. I did have a question about one of the invoices, which I've asked both Infomark and Nick from Benchmark. He said he'll get back to me by next Wednesday on it. So it's a 0 Harmony Square Drive. The invoice or the bill from Toho was 10 times as much as it was the month before. And so I had a question about it, whether it was a leak or some issue. This was for an invoice that went from the meter reading was the middle of January to the middle of February. So, sorry, the middle of December to the middle of January. So this is the most recent one. So I don't know what it is now. But I will move to
Oh,
approve.
I had one question. This is actually for, Infomark. Why are we $344,000 short on collections from the tax collector?
I'm gonna get that answer for you. We have to, get with Leah's team and they'll have to pull it and figure out exactly where it's coming from. I spoke with.
Oh, okay, because I mean, that's a big chunk of money.
Yes.
Yeah, I was
I'm looking
asking
into
them,
it.
is this a couple of properties, but owned by one entity, or is it?
Well,
all-
that would be my suspicion.
That's mine too.
Yeah,
and That's what
okay.
I asked Jennifer during the break between the workshop and the
Oh,
meeting. So
okay.
she said she would find out for us.
Very good. Now I'll entertain your motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And lastly, do we have any supervisor requests?
Yes. Sorry, just a few. One of them is garden shed. Do we still need a garden shed?
Yep.
We still need a garden shed, so we haven't taken action on that. In previous agendas, I had gotten quotes from one company that was I believe a metal structure, and one company that was, I know it was cook sheds, and I think it was Carolina Carports or Carporch One. Let's revive those, please, for next month's agenda. Yeah, I don't know if they're still valid because it's been probably 60 days.
Yeah, we'll reach out to them and make sure the price is valid.
Okay, so please bring that up. Also, we had talked about what, if anything, we were gonna do in the alleyways where there were ribbon curbs. We had talked about putting children at play signs up. We had talked about boulders. They were very expensive. Where did we land on that? I don't even remember. David, do you remember?
The last was to, if we do put them off, make sure that waste management doesn't stop the service, because when the homeowners on Blazing Star did a similar thing to protect their street, they stopped coming. We gotta make sure that when we do that to protect our streets, you're not gonna get fallback from waste management, saying we're not gonna open down your streets, continue service. I can follow with Jennifer or Angel, have that conversation with waste management. That's what the subway they're looking for.
Well, I mean, hadn't we, at least we'd heard the idea of their insurance maybe covering some of the damage?
Yeah,
with their-
Haven't heard back yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't want to blindly put them in place, Carol, and then they have a strike or something like inconvenience.
Okay, do we have enough rocks on the Garden Road?
No.
So what's the status of that, Jorge? Rocks for the Garden Road? Yeah, so stones for the Garden Road, because we approved, and so what's the plan?
I can order it next week. I got paid this week, so I can order.
Okay, let's make a note, please. Make a note to remind yourself, please. Thank you. Just a note that, we apparently have a, picnic table that's not been in use. Last night, the Nature Mammal Committee talked about ordering a new one. Like, the cost is like $905, but apparently there's one existing. So we're gonna put a picnic table at the entrance to Billy's Trail on CMD property. And the ramps, aluminum ramps that had been used, I think, in one of the mobile buildings that were just sitting around like trash, are going to be utilized on Billy's Trail as well. So that's good news, and Jorge and Tim Dwyer are going to work on that. And I know there was one other thing, and I'm sorry, I'm looking for it. David, when do we next get a report from the Army Corps of Engineers or South Florida Road Management District, or whoever, about whether we're doing enough on our monitoring and maintenance of invasive species?
Catherine Bowman submits either semi-annual or quarterly report to South Florida, and I'll follow up with her if we have met the objective, the goal of the percent reduction as a conservation area, overall findings in the general market.
Yeah, because it's really important for us to think about that when we're preparing the budget. And that's all I have.
Anybody else? No. Well, I'll
Move
certainly,
to adjourn.
I'll
Uh,
second.
all those in favor? Aye. Thank you all very much. Everybody have a nice Easter.
Can you add my?
Thanks, everyone.
I'm
Sorry,
sorry, I had it muted. I don't ever put it back on right.
were you voting to adjourn or did you have?
Yes, I didn't, I keep it muted because, and then I couldn't find the button to unmute it, so I'm still learning this stuff.
Both recorded.
Thank you,
There we
Joe.
go.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Feel better.
Oh, thank you.
You have your hand, Hannah? Oh, guess not.
She's probably like me and doesn't know what buttons to push.